What do you see as your legacy?
My legacy is really only for me personally important what my children think.
We've taken stuff from our parents of how they parented. They took it from their parents. We take it now. We pass it to our kids, and they take it and they pass it on. Basically, in 100 years, everyone you know will not be on the earth anymore. Even the most popular, most important, most everything, whatever at the time, eventually just becomes and goes away.
Welcome back to the Midlife Crisisses, where we are always having crises. Sometimes they're different, sometimes they're the same, and they're always ongoing. I am one of the co-hosts, Tyson Apostol, one of the top 10 to 20 most popular Survivor contestants of all time, which is pretty good considering how many people have played that game. So that's it. That's me. With me, host of other shows, other things. No, but like when we posted this podcast, Bradley, somebody got on that listens to one of my other podcasts and said, I worked with Bradley when he was hosting something as production behind the scenes. He wouldn't know me, remember me, recognize me, but I've worked with him on jobs.
I bet I would. I haven't been on jobs that are so big that there's like an entire control room of people I never meet. Was this in Arizona? Because I worked in Arizona for a few years at a TV station.
I don't know where she worked with you. She probably, I'm assuming LA because because she's I don't think she's in Arizona. She's just a fan of my other podcast, News AF. And so she gets on live and interaction. She's like, I actually worked with Bradley before. Steffers. So Stephanie.
Oh yeah, that name definitely sounds familiar. I'll check on my IG.
The name Stephanie sounds familiar.
No,
You've met a Stephanie before? Oh.
Steffers sounds familiar. I know Steph. Yeah, I know a lot of Stephanies.
The name Stephanie. Yeah. Okay. Bradley Hasemayer.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, so good segue into who I am. I am a friend of Stephanie's across the world. I am a host, content creator, arguably the coffee roaster of the year here in Georgia.
Wow.
I am an Emmy award-winning host. I don't know if I've ever dropped that. The coffee thing's not real.
You have, but we've never explored that you are an Emmy award-winning host.
We're not going to explore it, but we can if you want. I have it right here. You want me to get it?
You have an Emmy right behind you, right there. Are you?
Ooh, that's got to go down a level.
William, did you know that? I mean, he said Emmy award-winning, but I always assumed it was true. But we've never explored it. Why and how?
I was working on a show. It's a daytime regional.
Okay.
So where
was the show?
I tell people the show was The List. It was a pop culture news show. I was on it for a couple of years as one of the hosts. We did 1 million segments. It was a lot of like really quick segments, and so a couple of them were nominated. And one of the ones that I was a part of won. Actually, a whole show. We did a Super Bowl show because Super Bowl had come to Phoenix. We were shooting in Phoenix, did a whole show. So the people who were a part of that production team.
Was this just like 2 years ago?
No, this was, let's see, been here 3, 6, about like 8 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, normally it stays in a box. And I was like, you know what? Now I have a shelf and I'm going to stick it up there and turn it backwards so it's subtle. And then I use the box that it's in to hold up my laptop. So, you know, it never stops working for me.
Yeah.
You're doing it all wrong. You don't want that to be subtle.
It needs to be turned around the other way
at all times.
Just have it creep in.
Build a mic into it so it is your mic.
Perfect.
Oh my gosh, use it as a mic stand.
Yes.
Like William, maybe on the wings of the Emmy.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think you could put, see, there's coffee cup William. I think you could go with like a different mic setup, wire it through the Emmy, and then just talk into the Emmy as the microphone.
Oh, I love it. Like a lav, just to attach a lav on there, and that's it.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to work on that for next week. So you guys will hold me accountable, and our listeners, you guys can report back and see if it worked.
Okay.
But it's not just both of us. There's somebody else here too.
Yes. And we also have a question from
What's up, everybody? Colorado's top underwater photographer, William Drumm, coming at you live. I'm a single parent of a beautiful 4-year-old. I'm Billie Eilish's underwater photographer. I saw her live in Denver this week.
Yes.
She didn't really want me to upstage her, so she didn't like bring me on stage and introduce me, which was fine. You know, I didn't
That's
want to take
fair.
any of her clout or anything.
No.
But yeah, it was a great show, and I brought my niece. It's 13-year-old
fun.
niece. It was her first concert ever, and it's never going to get any better. So I feel a little guilty for that, but at least she had a good time at her first show.
Did
Totally.
you get to go backstage and stuff? Like, did Billie Eilish give you special treatment because you were the photographer, or did you buy tickets and just go sit with the masses?
The plebeians.
No, she gave me tickets. She gave me good tickets, but the backstage pass must have got lost somewhere. I'm not really sure.
It's in the mail still.
You tried to get back there, though, and you're like, no, I know her. I know her.
I take pictures of her. Okay, buddy. All
Yeah.
right, slow it down.
I did walk around, though, and everybody who was wearing my picture on their shirt, I was definitely like, you like that shirt? I took that photo.
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
God, oh
pretty
my God, oh my
surreal.
God. Yeah, it was
That's
good.
pretty rad, though. Like,
Super cool.
It
I would
was really
imagine it's
fun.
like a musician who writes a song and then they hear it on the radio. To know that's your art and it's spread at that level is really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I did get a lot of very giddy, excited girls when I told them that I was the photographer for that. So it was fun.
Nice. That seems like something I could lie about pretty easily if I went to a show somewhere.
Yeah.
I know.
And everybody believed you without any proof or anything. Or like,
Did you even have
a
a camera with you?
No, I wasn't carrying my underwater camera or my scuba gear at the time.
Oh, but I wish. Oh, that would be so great.
But wait, no, did they all
Prove
just
it.
believe
Okay,
you?
sir, hang on
Yes.
just a second.
Okay.
Zip, zip, zip.
Because I'd just be like, okay, this guy's a predator for sure. Like, do not.
No question.
But as soon as we fact check, if he is telling the truth, we trust him with everything. I will give him my social security number, whatever. But until, like, that's what my mindset going into it would be. But now that I know, like, yeah, you just go in, take credit. Is there going to be any social media posts of you just with your phone, like zooming in on everybody's shirts, being like, took that, took that, took that, took that?
That'd be
took that?
great.
I think it would be brilliant.
Maybe. I got a lot of cell phone video.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Very good.
I embarrassed my niece at every single opportunity. It was so good.
In a good way or a bad way?
It was good for me. I'm not sure about how she felt about it, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay. Like, do you think she'll go to the next Billie Eilish concert with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Then you're fine.
She had a great time. It was
Good.
awesome.
Good. You have a question for us.
I do. I've been thinking about this a bit lately. It's kind of not something that I've thought about much in the past, but as we're getting older, we're going through crises, we're figuring stuff out that's been popping into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as your legacy? Like when you're gone, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want on your tombstone? What do you want people to say in your eulogy? What's your legacy, and how solidified is it? Has it changed a lot through time? And yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
I've said it before. I'm just going to jump in here and say, William, you're a true artist. All of your questions are so deep and profound and interesting. And I feel like I just come with like some crumbs and you bring a whole apple pie from scratch. And like all your questions are so good. So kudos to what you're doing in your own life. Cause I love when it's your week for questions. It's always interesting.
Thank you.
My question was going to be way shallower than what you brought today. And now,
Is it okay to keep eating bacon for 3 meals or only 2? Let's talk about that.
It's interesting because, I mean, my legacy is really only for me personally important what my children think. Like when I'm gone, like I want my children to remember me. And I honestly just want them to remember me as a loving, supportive father. So, but attached to that are a lot of things that I've done that will live as long as technology and the internet survive, which is 4 seasons of Survivor, a season of The Challenge, a season of Marriage Boot Camp, all of my Instagram posts, all of my tweets, all of that stuff. And so, my Instagram before I had paying partners and things like that was mostly for me, I was building it to be something that my kids could go back and look at and be like, oh, Tyson, my dad's Instagram, he's dead now, but look at how much he loved us and how much he focused on us and stuff. That's gone away because I'm getting paid to post other
just sliding your
stuff.
child out of the frame. You're like, hey, girls, if you could just slide out of here, I got to get a picture of just dad. Okay. My legacy is I love you, but also I need to get paid. So,
yeah. So, which is cool. But yeah, I think when I was younger, my legacy was, when I was a pro cyclist, it was like, it'd be cool to, at least participate in the Tour de France, if not have some good cycling victories. But I don't know that I ever, because I think when you say legacy, that's like, sorry about that. That was my phone. When you when you think legacy, it's like hard stop. Like, this is my legacy. That's because you're like, when you're dead, the legacy has already been built, created.
Yeah.
Here's what it is.
Yeah.
But I think at this stage in our life, and even when you're younger, in my mind, it's always changing. And because there's future still left, you don't know. Like, maybe at 99, I'm going to run for president of the United States. We don't, who knows what the future holds. So for me, the one thing is that, loving father, love my kids, support my kids. And that's the one thing right now that I think will be the constant, no matter what else comes up in my life. But other than that, I have no expectations or desires, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, I think about this in also in terms of like, I've seen these Instagram posts where it's like, I don't know if it's an actual speech or if it's just like AI speech, but it's like, basically in 100 years, everyone will not be on the earth anymore. Like, basically it's a full reset of what's going on in the earth. And there's some kind of like, you think about that from a standpoint of like, who remembers, the Super Bowl winners 4 years ago, even. Like, I'm not even talking about like the 70s. I'm just talking about like a couple years ago, or who remembers who won gold in, downhill slalom 3 years ago. Like, so even these massive, huge achievements don't have cross-cultural significance. And I remember when I lived in LA, there was a lot of like, these are the most popular actors of the time. And, the industry was different than it is now. But there was like, these were gods, right? Like, we were men walking amongst gods. I mean, you're just in LA and you're like, wait, so like George Clooney lives here? Brad Pitt lives here? Like, oh my gosh, this is wild. Tom Cruise lives here. Like, I'm in the same city. This is crazy. And then I remember learning about old movies, because I never watched old movies growing up. Old movies, old music wasn't really a part of my family, not for any other reason than it just wasn't. And so, when you start becoming an actor, especially if you're drinking the Kool-Aid, it's all about, let's study the classics and let's go back and, we're learning from this coach and this teacher and whatever. And they'd say, go back and watch this guy. And I'm like, I have no idea who it is. And it's like, oh, his name's Rock Hudson, and he won all these Oscars, and he was in these huge movies. And I'm like, never heard of him. And it was like kind of a bit of like a moment to me to be like, even the most popular, most important, most everything, whatever at the time, eventually just becomes and goes away. Even musicians who have had huge careers like U2 and Madonna, you could talk to like my daughter's friends and be like, oh yeah, that's like that U2 song. And they're like, who? And you're like, oh, you don't even know there's an entire band with amazing music out there, or Beatles or whatever. And so the idea of legacy from that standpoint of like a global legacy, started like kind of disappearing, I think. And I don't know if I ever wanted to have like that, but I've always been somebody who's like, let me go for the biggest, the best, the fastest, the strong, like whatever, it's got to be there. And so I kind of like started dialing that back down. And so now I kind of look at what is my sphere of influence? What are those places that I could make a difference or whatever? And, I've heard the idea that like your kids are your legacy, almost kind of like we've taken stuff from our parents of how they parented. They took it from their parents. We take it. Now we pass it to our kids, and they take it and they pass it on. And so there's generational legacy from that standpoint. And a lot of times within that too, you're trying to filter out the stuff you didn't like and try to use the stuff you do like, whether you're learning new things or it's like, my dad was at every game. I loved that. I'm going to do that. My dad never told me he loved me. I don't like that. So I'm going to do that. So you have these kind of things. And so I think from that standpoint, there's a little bit of a legacy. But I've also been thinking about legacy from a standpoint of like, is there something I could, like a business kind of thing I could pass on? Because I think we're all in this creative space of like, I kind of am the business. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't own a coffee shop or a restaurant or an architecture firm. You know, like there's not like, oh, let me go work at my parents', blah, blah, blah. And so there's a part of me that thinks, you know, who knows how long that kind of legacy would be, but like the idea of having an established, a brand, a company, a thing that's like physical and tangible. So I've thought a little bit about that as well. I think the older I get, my values of what I would want on my tombstone or said at my eulogy, I think have changed. I think when I was younger, competitive, never, you know, like hard worker, never stops. Like those would have been things that I think in my 20s that I would have been like, yeah, it's me, man. Like never sleeps. We've talked a lot about sleep on here. But I think now one of the traits that I really value the most is openness, in accepting people, listening to people, even if I don't agree, to be able to have a conversation with someone and say, oh, you know, I've never considered that viewpoint. I don't agree with it, but it's great to hear, you know, or even open to life. I thought I was going to be a traditional actor on sitcoms going this way. That didn't happen. It became hosting. Hosting has pivoted now to like content creation. But like if I was stuck on I've got to be an actor, I would be so devastated. I wouldn't have a house, may not have a family, you know, because eventually like you just got to figure out where you kind of bump around. So I think for me, the idea of legacy is shifting. And I think, Tyson, you make a good point, which is like, maybe in another 20 or 30 years, it'll change again in terms of, you know, what I want from that. I see a lot of grandparents living out a legacy of like parenting 2.0, like they're getting another go around. Yeah. And you see like the way they prioritize the things. And granted, they don't have to be in it to win it all the time, but like there's just so much more chill with stuff that you're like, what? We can get ice cream on a Thursday? We didn't get ice cream unless we got straight A's. And now, you know, like once a month.
Last Friday of the month.
Yeah, exactly.
If we had kept our rooms cleaned
right.
for 4 consecutive weeks.
Right.
We would get. Yeah.
Is that a sock on the floor? Good luck. Wait to December. We're going to try it again. So I think the idea of legacy evolves and changes too.
Yeah. That's interesting what you're saying about how you might want to have some sort of a legacy as far as, you know, you're saying a business, but it's also like I do a lot of consulting and contracting, and my sister is a consultant and my other sister is a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a consultant. So even if it's not direct like that, it's funny how that just trickles down to the generations. And
yeah,
like I never thought that I would be a consultant. My sister never thought she would be a consultant. Right after we do this podcast, I've got a consulting appointment with somebody in the dive industry. So it's funny how unintended, like your kids see you doing things, and even if they might not want to emulate you at the time, then it's pretty likely that their life will follow a different track or a similar track. Although my dad was like the king consultant. He had a white LeBaron convertible.
Oh,
and his license plate was consult.
Yes.
He was living the consultant life every day.
I imagine he's like a wolf of Wall Street for the consulting world.
I didn't even know that was like a passion that could run so deep that you would get a vanity plate for it.
I need a vanity plate here, guys. Oh, what do you want it to be like? Number 1, dad? No. It would be like, enjoy life? No. Yeah. Consult.
I'm one of the top consultants in the larger Denver area.
I like the larger
one, like all.
The larger area is so good, yeah.
All areas of consulting are mine. And if you want to take that area, you're going to have to battle the king.
That's so good.
Bullhorns on the front of that LeBaron, all of it.
I think I might know the answer
that
to this.
is legacy.
Yeah, it is.
That's legacy, Tyson, like passing through your family, and like you're like,
exactly.
Oh, I didn't even try for that, but there's a bit of my past that's in my present.
Tyson, I know how when you were growing up, you didn't necessarily have set plans for what you wanted to do. You wanted to make some money so you could eat some food, hang out with your friends, party a little bit. Did you have any sort of legacy when you were like ideas of what you wanted your legacy to be when you were younger? Me and Bradley, I think, both kind of wanted our
Hasemayer.
legacy to be a little bit
yeah.
more grandiose. I don't know, something that lives on culturally or whatever. Did you have anything like that when you were younger?
I don't think so. I think I just wanted to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wanted to be liked by strangers, by people close to me, by whoever like that. I think that's probably a pretty natural feeling. But now, and as we're talking about legacy, I grew up Mormon, and in the Mormon culture, doing genealogy and looking at your past and your ancestors is a very like big part of that. And I get messages from my dad like, hey, did you know that 300 years ago, this was one of our relatives and this is a cool thing they did? So I think now, like in 300 years from now, sure, globally, maybe 300 years from now, nobody's saying Tyson Apostol, but ancestors are looking back and saying, oh, this guy won Survivor, which was the biggest television show of that 20-year span of when he lived, which is pretty cool to think about it. Let's, celebrate him a little bit more. So I think like when you look at like that Disney movie where he goes to the afterlife in like Day of the
Coco.
Dead style, Coco.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
I might live longer in the afterlife because I will be remembered every Day of the Dead from my ancestors, just like being like
cool,
Googling pictures of me and saying, okay, this guy, he was cool. So yeah, I don't. So when I think of legacy and stuff, I think more of that rather than like global or international or world recognized, because there's very, very, very few people who are celebrated by the world too long after their death. And even like people who have been able to do that for a while, eventually, it seems like religious figures from the past, sure.
Yeah.
And other than that, like that comes to mind, maybe like the founding fathers, the presidents of the United States.
Yeah.
And then if you want to try and get broader, like Elvis Presley, like he's done pretty well for himself. Artists, that's true. Mm-hmm. Yes. Artists, both music and, the painting and stuff like that, like Rembrandt and Picasso, even all of those, like back hundreds and hundreds of years. So I'm not necessarily talented enough to be remembered that long term unless I start a religion that really takes off.
Not a bad idea.
Gotta be. You have the chops for it. Coming from the Mormon faith, you're living in a desert area. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the beginning of a Netflix show if I've ever seen one.
So, yeah, I think doing something that your ancestors can look back on and be proud of, and be proud to have to be part of your bloodline, even though they never knew you personally, is, I think, not necessarily important, but like, that's cool.
It's
like,
cool. That's
cool.
Awesome. I like that.
Yeah. I like that too. And I think something that's really interesting there is this idea of like representation. They did it so I can. I think so often the idea of that seems like it has to be so big, like, like a Ruby Bridges type of situation where it's this like massive thing. But within your family, when you learn like, oh, my great grandfather, like I was into baseball forever. Part of my like forever goals, I think we talked about this in 7th grade. We had to set like our 3-month, 6-month, and then it was like 10-year and 20-year goals. And that included baseball all the way up to playing for the Dodgers. And so I was, but
you would have won the World Series this year, dude.
I know. I could have been in there. Me and Ichiro. But, I would probably be more of a manager maybe at this point, but I'm still flex. I got room out there,
If you were right field, you'd still be fine out there, or maybe a knuckleball specialist.
Ooh, I like that. Just bring him in for this. That's my legacy. There's Knuckleball Bradley.
There's only
I'll take it.
Knuckleball Bradley.
Kiss the ring.
Comes in once a month and either pitches 5 home runs in a row or a no-hitter.
Cleans up. That's true. It is really either way. But the idea that I had a great uncle who played in the minors, and I was like, oh, it is possible. It's in our lineage. Like there's something about it in our blood that all of a sudden then became like possible. My dad didn't really play sports. My mom didn't really play sports. So I just felt like, well, this is like, I'm going to really have to step out of my own abilities here to be able to do much with it. And so I think that's really cool. That idea of like, even legacy from that standpoint is kind of empowering. Some of the legacy that you can be leaving behind is by what we're doing here, whether it's like, trying to be better, or the legacy of, engaging community, creating community, whether it's like just traits or something big, like, my dad started a content marketing company, and he was always, doing videos and stuff. I mean, my daughter knows how to edit. She understands green screen. She knows, like rule of thirds for photography and for videography and this type of stuff. And we work with cameras all the time. And so there is some of that's passing down. Whether she ever does anything with it consciously, I don't know, but she's definitely a performer. So, I think she'll be around cameras and on set and those types of things to varying degrees throughout her career, whether it's that becomes her career or her life. But I never thought about that before. But when you bring that up, Tyson, I was like, that's kind of a cool idea of looking back as a part of like empowering the future of your own sphere. Like you were talking about, it can't be the world, but maybe even in your own family or your own community or whatever.
Well, and I also think it's interesting that you're talking about this great uncle or whoever who played in the minors, whatever that was. He could have been a terrible person. You don't have any information
Totally.
on that. I like in the
That's such a good
100 years in the future, they're not looking back and be like, this guy was a real asshole in the Starbucks line.
Yeah.
They're looking back and being like, this guy accomplished a thing that is notable. That's awesome. And so unless you're particularly evil or extremely righteous, you're not being remembered for either of those two things. You're being remembered for something notable you achieved in your life.
Wow.
And
that is a good point.
Even if you are, I feel like most of the people who live on in historical records, you got to be kind of evil to get to that kind of level where people remember you. I don't know, like infamy and being famous are so closely related. And there's a lot of people who were terrible people, but that we still know who they are because of what they
or even
contributed.
Celebrate them.
Yeah, and celebrated.
This brings up a question that I think is really tangential but important to this, which is the idea of like, can you be a great success and also be nice, engaged with your kids, et cetera, et cetera? I don't think you can. I don't think you can be a Steve Jobs. I don't think you can be an Elon Musk. I don't think you can be any of these people that it takes to get to that level. Like, do you remember the movie Whiplash?
Yeah.
It was about the drummer, and it was the guy who plays
a movie. William and I have never heard of it.
No, it's great. So it's about a drummer basically, and for him to be the best drummer ever, his teacher is like maniacal, and it's like he's got to play until his fingers bleed, and if he's even off by like a little bit, then he's got to start all over, and the teacher like kicks over the drum set a few times, and as the kid he's a kid basically, it's Miles Teller, as he's relaying this information, everyone around him's like, this is a terrible relationship. Like, he should not be your coach or your teacher. I don't care how good you're going to be. Well, he ends up winning like Grammys and everything. And so like the terribleness, sorry, spoiler, the terribleness of what the teacher did is what empowered him to go beyond what he could be. But at the same time, it was abuse. So, it's kind of like, I just don't think that you can get to that absolute pinnacle tip top without you can't make omelets without cracking some eggs. That's like the nice way to put it. But basically, I've realized I don't think I want to sacrifice all this other stuff, family, relaxation, like time to take a break, being able to do stuff like this for that's the payment for, absolute pinnacle fame or whatever that would be.
So with your legacy then, it's mostly for your family. It's for your kids and for your family, not necessarily for the wider world. That's not really something that really factors in.
I think so for me, because it's too overwhelming to think larger than that. And then you have to like sacrifice too much at that smaller level to be able to be able to get there. And frankly, it's like, these are the people I care the most about anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I necessarily like care about every single person in the world in the same way. So
Well, and it's where we're at now. Like, I think, let's say, okay, yeah, like all of a sudden I'm a politician 10 years down the road, and then I'm a statewide politician, and I'm like,
then you're
okay,
president of the United States.
Exactly. Then I'm thinking world and history changing, and that's when I'm like, okay,
you got a platform.
I'm now going to be remembered for changing the world for this reason, and hopefully it's positive. But you know how power goes to your head, and so like that's like, yeah.
He used to be a nice guy. That's how I remember Tyson.
Yes, he was great before
really
he became
cool
president. Then it all went to his head. No, but like that's, I think, for me, when I'm taking a step back and looking at it, yes, right now everything is for my family's legacy, specifically my children to remember me positively, and for my ancestors to be proud of the things I accomplished in my life. And then if by chance I gain a larger platform for whatever reason, then maybe that shifts a little bit or grows. I don't think it necessarily shifts from those things. It just adds more of those legacy goals. But like Bradley, like having that Emmy there, like we joke about it as daytime, whatever, but your ancestors in the future will look back and be very proud that they're related to someone who was able to win such an award.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of my takeaway from this is also it's got me thinking a lot about, like, you know, just like goals, you got to set them so that you can achieve them. I don't even know what I would necessarily want my legacy to be. I think I'm talking out of the, like, if everything ended right now type of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of, like, are there things that, like, I want X, Y, and Z, and therefore, you know, I need to make sure that we're, you know, seen as a charitable family. We should be donating more money. We should, you know, or I want to be seen as.
But that's fleeting.
You know,
that's fleeting. After a generation passes past your death, nobody will remember that unless you built the college football stadium.
Right. Your name is on it.
Yes.
But even then, I say stadium names all the time. Of course, now it's like Pack, you know, the Pack, Bell Pack, or
Waste
Petco
management.
Park.
The waste
management open,
Glop
right?
zone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even then, it's like you just say the names, and then you're like, oh, like here in Georgia where we live, we'll be like, okay, we're going to turn on Ellison Street, and we're going to go right on, you know, McGovern, and then you're like, oh, turns out that was like a wealthy farm family from 200 years ago, and now we know the name of the street, but we have nothing to connect them to.
Yeah, but if it was named like the Bradley Hasemayer Memorial Stadium partnered with AT&T, like you would, like, that's, people would be like,
co-sponsored by Citizen Watch.
Yeah, that's definitely a guy that we know, that we should know. Let's Google him. Like, then that is a legacy. Yeah.
So
I like the idea of looking for a stadium for your name. That is a goal, Tyson, that you've placed in front of us.
Stadium names are all so lame nowadays. AT&T Stadium.
Yeah.
But the collegiate ones are the ones where they take money from donors and then you put your name on it. So it would have to be collegiate.
To play devil's advocate a little bit.
Yes.
If your goal for your legacy is, I'm going to be good to my kids, I'm going to be kind, like, isn't that kind of shooting low? You know what I mean? Instead of having like a grandiose legacy, like, hey, I'm going to be a household name. I'm going to be remembered for my art that I've created throughout the generations. Like, isn't that something more challenging, but more invigorating and exciting to aim for than something like, hey, I'm going to be kind to my kids because I love them?
Is that your goal?
When I was growing up, I definitely wanted to be a household name, and I wanted my legacy to be something like that. Somebody who's remembered through history. As time has went on, I'm almost 40 years old. I've got a lot of work left to do on that. But yeah, I still think that I do want to create iconic art. I do want to be remembered by more than just my family and relatives into the future. So it's I think for people who treat their families good and love their kids, then that's almost just like not even a goal, because it's something that comes so naturally for us. Like, we love our kids. We're going to do all we can for our kids. So it's not like challenging. Whereas if your legacy is something much more grandiose, you're still going to be kind to your kids. You're still going to be good to your kids, but then you have a higher target that you're shooting for while you're doing that at the same time.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Once I'm dead, I'm not going to give a shit, to be honest. And the only reason that I care to be remembered by my kids as being a loving father is for their mental health as they continue on with their life once I'm gone.
Uh-huh.
So the other stuff,
so therefore it doesn't matter at all. Like,
it only matters in the fact that I want my kids to be as healthy as possible, as healthy as possible emotionally and mentally after I die.
Yeah. It's kind of the difference between like being a boss and being like, I'll do it myself versus like, let me teach the people to do it. You can multiply your efforts. Like it's like the Tyson-ness branches out. But I also hear your point, William. I think to some degree it's like, do we aim for a street name? Do we aim for a coliseum? Like, at what level do we try to be? And look, ultimately, I think we're all wise enough, even in our midlife crises, to know that none of this truly brings fulfillment. One street, you're going to want two streets. You got a small stadium, you're going to want a big stadium. Like, right? It's like
D3 school, gross. Yeah, let's get a stadium at D1.
You got a bench at the D3 lacrosse game.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, let's see. Can we get 2 benches? Yeah. I saw that in LA too, right? I saw that with like, people in my acting class. Like, man, if I could just get my SAG card. And people with their SAG card were like, if I could just get a guest star. And the people in my class who had guest stars, like, if I could just get a co-star, if I could just get a reoccurring, and then you even see it with big time, like athletes want to be rappers want to be athletes, like actors want to be directors, so it's like, I think there's some degree of like, at least hopefully, and that was something that I learned in my time in LA, is just this concept that like, it's really not going to satisfy. Like, no level of fame is like enough. And I've been around enough wealthy people to know that there's also not like enough money, that's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that people are always like money hungry, but someone's like, oh, I hit 1 million, let's stop, so I know ultimately that level of legacy isn't going to necessarily fulfill me in a way that I'm lacking, I guess.
Yeah, but I do understand you, William, as an artist. You want to create the best and most loved piece that you can each and every time that you go out with your camera and create. And that, I think, is something different. I don't have that. I don't have a thing that I'm creating that I need people to love. This podcast, but right now it's in its infancy. And
you
my
created
kids,
them, right? So that is a part of your creation.
But like, I understand what you're saying, William. I think for you, I totally understand that. That makes sense to me. Like, if you're not in it to be the best or to really excel at your art, then why are you even there? So I totally get that. For me, I just don't feel like I have that thing that would drive me to achieve excellence in that way.
Yeah, but it's also setting the standard for your kids too. Like, hey, my dad is trying to be the best at something, and I really respect that about that.
I just tell him the best. I just tell him I'm the best at everything. Go out and wallop them in football real quick, and then be like, I'm number
Keep
1
them
football
humble.
player in the world.
You're just like William, walking around being like, I took that picture on your shirt. I took that picture on your shirt. I'm the best at everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just think that there's like this balancing act it's the constant balancing act that all of us do. It's between success and being okay financially and being there for your family and having time with your family.
Yeah.
And I think that an important component of that is demonstrating to your kids that like you should strive for these higher things. Like, you got to balance your time. You don't want to sacrifice doing activities with the kids and spending that really quality time with them. But at the same time, you want to set that standard that like, hey, look at me. I'm trying. I'm out here trying. I'm not just trying to spend time with you. I'm also trying to succeed personally and be happy myself. And you should do the same when you're my age.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right there, happy. Like, I don't care if my kids are top 1 in the world. I want them to do the things they love and be happy doing it. And hopefully I've set them up in a good enough way that they can pursue those things as much as they want. And find something they love enough to make it a living or a career or something like that. But like, I'm like, my oldest daughter loves synchronized swimming right now. She actually asked to be bumped up from the pre-comp into the competition with the older girls. They accepted, but they called us in for a meeting. They're like, you have to commit. This is 3 days a week, 2.5 hours a session. Wow. And we're going to try and get to junior nationals in Arlington later, early or middle of next year. So you have to be committed to go to that if we do qualify and all of this stuff. And synchronized swimming, you're not going to make a ton of money doing that. Yeah. But she absolutely loves it. And who knows what will come from it. Like she's building team bonds. Discipline. She's learning discipline. Yeah. She's learning how to focus and how to memorize and how to train. And so for me, like that is a win for me. Like I'm absolutely. Like, hell yes. And my younger daughter, same thing with skateboarding. She always wants to practice skateboarding. We take her to skateboarding lessons. She absolutely loves it. And I think for me, that's the win, is finding things that my daughters are passionate enough about, that they themselves are personally motivated enough to excel to what their desire is. And it doesn't have to be winning. Like my youngest is very competitive. She's like, was I the best one at skateboarding class today? And I was like, I mean, you were good. Like, you were really,
it wasn't actually a competition. I don't know how to say yes or no. Yeah.
You did this the best that I saw. And my oldest one doesn't have that like competitive. She likes the structure of being in synchronized swimming, and she likes being in the water. And so those two things combined is like her thing. So, I don't aspire to have legacy, like world renowned celebration, but all that could change if you just give me a little bit of power. And I'm not even joking. Like, I know that sounds funny and you're like, Tyson's being funny, but like, if I all of a sudden started a cult of like 20 people, then I would be like, I'm out to change the world. And I would probably feel like I'm changing it for the better. Like, I'm not going to be like an evil cult leader.
You would feel that way. I don't know if objectively that's how it would be.
No, yes, correct. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You should check in with William and I every now and then just for some real talk.
Yeah. Yes. Or like I just said earlier about being a politician or doing this or that, I think if I earned the platform or was given the platform to make a greater difference, then my legacy goals would shift a bit. But at this point in time, like I don't have aspirations to do that. I just like, my goal is to like go see a doctor timely one day and get my colonoscopy because I'm 45, which I've been just like not doing because I feel fine.
Yeah. I also think the idea of legacy now is so much harder in terms of like longer lasting. I mean, how many artists were there in the world before, during Da Vinci's time or, Monet or
we don't know. Like that? We didn't have the internet.
Exactly. So there were 7. There were 7. I just looked it up. There were 7 artists in the whole world. And so there wasn't that much competition. And then also like, then those people become the thing and that's it. And now like your news cycle, the thing that like, do you remember in the, like all the stuff with Clinton back in the day, the Monica Lewinsky stuff, right? Yeah. When that happened, that was like a whole year of coverage that happened. And it was like that. Now anybody can do anything. There can be a shooting at a school. There could be, someone, hits a buzzer beater and wins $1 million at a game. Like there could be these massive moments and 24 hours later, it's gone. So it's kind of like the idea of like even trying to create the legacy is like that. That alone is virtually impossible now because it's become such this, every social media post is basically trying to do that. So your competition's a lot harder, and the attention span of it is like it's gone. So I think that's also a little bit of a cultural element too.
And also, how many artists were there who weren't famous during their time, and then
that's a good point too.
End up being celebrated afterwards,
right? Especially musicians. I feel like.
Would you be pleased with that, William? If you're like you're not going to be remembered for 100 years, but then one of your prints will surface.
Yeah.
100 years after your death, one of your prints will surface. That's a great question. And everybody will lose their shit over it because wildlife doesn't exist anymore 100 years from now. And everybody's going to William Drumm prints, and they're now worth 30 million Bitcoin each.
Katrakas.
No, you're right.
Those would
Like, I
be
wouldn't care.
archaic.
I'll be dead. I don't think anything happens after you're dead. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point. And
What a bummer. It's like
I
leaving
know.
the restaurant
I
right
know.
before your food arrives.
And
It's like,
listen,
damn, I was so close.
yeah.
I waited all this time. I even paid. And we just left. Why did we leave?
Just left because it was taking too long.
It was taking too long. I'm not going to wait for this. I get Taco Bell down the street.
Yeah.
But his steak's coming.
And even if something is after this life, it's not like you're looking down being like, fuck yeah, dude, that
I
print
did
just
that.
sold for
I did
$30
that.
trillion.
Hey, everybody come over here. Check this out.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
watch this guy as he bids at Sotheby's on my print, the last one that exists, because everybody threw the other ones away thinking they were worthless. Now there's one left. It's worth so much money, and everybody in art class knows my name.
Boom.
One of my favorite artists was Frank Frazetta. If you haven't
Never
heard of him,
heard
you
of
should
him.
check him out.
Rosetta Stone.
he did
I
like
remember it from
Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone. It was-
He did like all the Tarzan covers and Conan the Barbarian covers.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See? Okay.
And his grandkids take care of his art galleries and his collection. And, that's their full-time job.
Yeah.
That's their life, is to take care of his legacy
His
in terms
legacy,
of the
yeah.
art that he created. And I mean, that's pretty awesome. I'm actually friends with his granddaughter on Instagram, and
Oh, cool.
he was super influential for me as an artist and growing up. So that's another really cool way of looking at legacy. It's similar to what you're talking about, Bradley, like having a company that you can create. It could also be something artistic or philanthropic.
Philosophical,
No,
philanthropic.
philanthropic. That's the one.
I
But
think
yeah.
William just ran out. His RAM was too much.
Yeah.
He was buffering.
And I think our parents are probably different. Like, my dad has built this company from the ground up, this construction company. He's very proud of it. He still loves to go into work every day. It's one of his babies.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think he's also very excited for that to live on and to take care of his kids and his grandkids in a way like that. So I think
Will
if
that
I
be
had
you
something,
taking it over, though? Is there pressure
my
there
brother,
for you?
no, my brother's
okay.
taking it over.
Oh,
But
cool.
I think that, like, if I had something like that, yeah, then I would be, more focused on helping something like that thrive before I pass on to my kids. But at this point, it's like, you got great genes. You're going to be tall and hopefully, athletic naturally. And that's, a lot of people would pay a lot of good money for that. So
Bottle up the Tyson GNA.
Yes.
Yeah. That'd be good.
All right. Well, hopefully we've left some legacy with you all, and people 100 years from now will listen to this episode and still be able to learn something from it, because if not,
Yes.
why are we even here?
Why are we even here? That's a great way to go.
Thanks, Bradley and William. Until next week, everyone. See ya.
Keep on crisising.
Later.